Jeez.
What is that?
That's
Spiders.
spider for sure, but what the hell?
I've never seen anything like that before.
Wow.
I mean, that thing looks like it could take a chunk out of you.
Yeah.
I want to get a picture of that too.
I wonder what that guy is.
Well, there's only one thing to do.
Poke
We
it.
have to poke it.
No, you gotta wait.
Crikey, they hate when you do that. So what I do, and I'm sure everybody's got their own system, but my dehydrator is kind of set up to handle 2 large servings on one plate. So I'll smooth this out to a single layer and then move on to the next level or tray. So that's 2 normal man servings on that single tray. Another little tip is just to use a butter knife to put some air pockets, like little tiny slices, into the tray of whatever you're dehydrating. It just kind of helps it dry out better. You know, making my own dehydrated meals obviously are going to save me a ton of money, but I'm also getting a way better product. My meals come with one thing I guarantee the commercial made meals don't have, especially like Mountain House, and that's flavor. You can put a lot more flavor and nutrition and energy into your homemade meals than you'll ever get out of the commercial made ones. So now we'll just let that run for about a day. I'm going to check on this with you about 12 hours later. I just left this overnight, and you can see that it's lost about half, I'd say 50% of its weight and volume. It's about noon the next day, and I'll actually sometimes start turning it over. You know, moisture gets trapped between the tray and the food, and this hurries it along a little bit. I don't always do this, but it just kind of hurries it along and makes sure everything gets dried out. It's getting pretty dry. So I've let this dehydrate for one night and one day, and you can kind of tell when it's done. Everything will be really crunchy. Just by feeling it, you can tell there's no moisture left in the meal. So now I'll dump everything into a bowl. I've got 2 pounds 6 ounces. So what is that? That's 38 ounces. And I divide that by 12 because there's 12 servings in the batch that I make. And that comes out to about, I don't know, 3.1, 3.2 ounces. And so that's how I divide up my packages for the dehydrated meals, by 3.1 or 3.2 ounces a piece. But before I start making the individual packets, I'm going to put this off to the side and stick it in the freezer while I make my cornbread. I make the cornbread recipe according to recipe, except that I add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt just for extra preservative value. And I also put it in a bigger pan than I normally would, just to spread it out thin for easier dehydration. And we'll cook that up. Once it's cooked up and cooled down a little bit, I'll cut them into small squares and set them out on my trays. And we'll get this going. It doesn't take long. 3 or 4 hours and the cornbread is dehydrated. So I've got a little workstation set up here with the meal, the cornbread, a scale, a little bowl, and I've got my bags. But I want to show you one other step that I think is worth every bit of time to do. Using parchment paper, I make a small inner bag. I fold the edges around to create a bag that I slip inside of the plastic backpack bag. And this does a few things for me. Number one, it helps the plastic bag from being punctured by the sharp edges on the dehydrated food. Not only does that help keep it fresher, but when you add water in this to rehydrate it, the water won't leak out. Number two, I take the parchment paper out, of course, before I add the water to the meal. And this makes a great liner. I can put it in my bowl and then put my meal inside the bowl. Or if I'm just using a cup, I can put it inside of there and put my meal inside of there. Or even if I'm just using a handy piece of bark at the campsite, It just makes a great liner that I can put my food on, and then when I'm done, I can throw it in the fire. Less dishes. I like that. And lastly, it makes great tinder, especially on those days that it's wet out. You've always got dry tinder that you're carrying with you, and it costs pennies and almost zero weight to carry. It's in every meal that you have. Once I get my bags ready, it's pretty easy from here. I just measure out what the serving sizes are. In this case, as I mentioned earlier, it was 3.1, 3.2. I'll measure that out on the scale and pour it into the bag. Get that down in there, and then I'll add 2 or 3 pieces of cornbread to fortify that meal, and they're ready to be sealed up. See that? Math does work. Believe it or not, that's my 12th one, and that's what I got left. And there we go. I've got 12 large, nutritious, hearty servings ready to go into the woods. They're less than half their weight, they're less than half their volume, for less than $2.50 a serving. How long will they last? I really can't answer that. I've had them in the freezer for up to 2 years, but they're usually rotated out within a year. I know they're good for 2 years in the freezer. How long will they last without refrigeration? I would say months. But again, I've never had them go that long. I've taken them into the bush, you know, for 2 weeks at a time and not used them. You know, maybe I was catching enough fish or I didn't need them. I've never had them spoil on me. But whenever I bring them back home, I stick them back in the freezer for long-term storage. How long did it take me to do this? Well, let's see, I started on Friday night and ended up finishing it up on Sunday early afternoon. But to me, it's time well spent. I like practicing this skill. I like knowing that I can pack my own food away. This is what self-sufficiency is all about. I mean, I enjoy this kind of lifestyle. This is what prepping should have been about before all the nutcases took over. It's not about doomsday. I'm not doing this for doomsday. I'm doing this for my health. I'm doing this for skill purposes. But let me tell you, if doomsday does happen, I got a lot of meals put away, guys. I got a lot of meals put away, and I got the skill to continue it. I like how easy and versatile these meals are in the field. If I have a lot of guys with me, we'll all be carrying our individual meals with us. That doesn't mean we can't cook them together. If I had 4 or 5 of these meals, I could add them to this pot, stick them on my stove, cover it with water, and we could boil our meal together. If I'm by myself or just with another person, I could use this cup, put both of our meals in there, cover them with water, and about 10 minutes of boiling and about 10 minutes of setting time, we could have a nice meal together. But let me show you my favorite way to rehydrate these meals. Before I show you that though, I got to show you how to make another piece of do-it-yourself gear. This is my homemade meal reheater pouch. It's approximately 9.5 inches wide by 13 inches long. Got a couple pieces of Velcro on it to keep it shut when I want it to stay shut. And it's a pouch made of Reflectix. Sealed it up with piping tape or duct tape on the side. I can buy Reflectix by the roll, $10 for about 16 feet, and it's probably one of the greatest materials ever created for the do-it-yourself camper. You can use it to augment your hammock, your sleeping bag, your sleeping pads. You can use it, just a small piece is really nice to have if it's raining out. You'll always have a dry place to sit. Great material, lightweight, very waterproof. Easy enough to do. I start out with a piece that's about 20 inches long and approximately 16 inches wide. I just cut a chunk off the top there, fold it over, tape it together, a couple pieces of Velcro later, and I've got my meal reheater pouch. Now let's go back and I'll show you how to reheat that meal. What I like about this method is it uses a lot less fuel. Once you get your water boiled, just open your bag. The other thing I like about it is that there's almost zero cleanup. Open your bag, take the inner bag out, that protective bag I was telling you about. Empty it into the plastic bag. Got a nice clean place. Put your stuff. I usually take out my cornbread. Put that bag inside your meal reheater bag. And then just cover your meal with the boiling water. Just enough, maybe an inch or a half inch above it. Close it up and just set it against something to stand up. You got to wait about 20 or 30 minutes. It does take a little longer, but it uses, like I said, a lot less fuel, whether you're burning sticks or whether you're burning fuel out of a canister like this. And, you know, when I'm out in the woods, I got a lot more time usually. Now in about 20 minutes, I'll check on it. That's when I'll add my cornbread. And just put a little more water over the top. Seal that back up. Let it sit for another 10 minutes. After my 30 minutes is up, take my bag out. It's still hot. I'll line my cup with that parchment paper. Pour out some of my meal. It's still steaming. Now I'll have some fresh red beans and rice. And no dishes. I like to mash my cornbread right up in it, but you don't have to do that. You can rehydrate the cornbread separately, and it'll actually rehydrate right back into little cubes. That's the way I like to do it. Wow. And when I'm done, it just comes right out of there. No cleanup. Just lick my spoon off and I'm done. That's why. That's my favorite way to rehydrate meals. Just a little do-it-yourself pouch. There is a little bit of a learning curve with the pouch. Some foods just take longer to rehydrate. Sometimes the weather can affect it. If it's colder, it's obviously going to take longer. And some foods just need to be simmered to properly rehydrate. But most of the time, the pouch works great. And it's so easy. The cleanup's so easy. There's no work after dinner's done. And it just takes so little fuel. It's by far my favorite. Anyway, guys, thanks for bearing through part 1 and 2 on this. I appreciate you listening, and that's all I got for you for now. I'll see you out there.